Hi folks, so right now we're going to go on a bit of a whirlwind tour of supply. So, supply is the willingness and ability to offer goods and services for sale. And the law of supply states that producers are willing to sell more of a good or service at a higher price than they are at a lower price. So you can see it's kind of the opposite of the law of demand, which stated that consumers would be more willing to buy more of a good or a service at a lower price. This is a supply schedule and is very similar to a demand schedule, except that it pertains to producers instead of consumers. And it shows how much of a good or service producers are willing and able to offer at each price. And like with demand schedules, there are individual supply schedules and market supply schedules. So this represents a supply schedule for ice cream cones. And now if the producer cannot get any money for the ice cream cones, they are not going to produce any. But as the amount of money that they're able to get for them goes up, they're willing to produce more and more until we get to $3. At $3, this particular producer would be willing to supply 5 ice cream cones. And then here we have a supply curve. And now notice how it goes in the opposite direction of the demand curve. The supply curve goes up, demand curves go down. And also remember that price is always on the y-axis and quantity is on the x-axis. And you can see that at Q1, quantity 1, the price is the lowest. But when we get to Q3, quantity 3, the price is the highest. So this is representing how at a higher price there is a greater supply. And like with demand, we can have an overall change in the supply, which causes the supply curve to either increase or decrease. The decreased supply curve is on the left, and it shows the supply moving from the right to the left. And then the increased supply curve has the entire curve moving to the right. And so there are several factors that affect supply. The first one is input costs, which is the price of the resources that are needed to produce a good or service. So, for example, if you produce tires and the price of rubber goes up, the supply is going to decrease at every price because you have to spend more money in order to create these goods. And so you can see the supply curve shifts to the left, it decreases. But if the price of rubber went down, it would cost you less to make your product. And so the supply would increase at every price. The entire curve would shift. The next is labor productivity, which is the amount of goods and services that a person can produce in a given time. Part of this is specialization, having people do a specific job and being very good at just that one job instead of people doing several different things. And there's also productivity increases with well-trained employees, functional workspaces, and employee wellness. Then we also have technology. More efficient technology helps people to work more quickly and produce more. For example, going from typewriters to computers greatly expanded the productivity of people who deal with word processing. And then we have government action, which takes the form of taxes, subsidies, and regulation. So a few examples of that. One example of a tax is the excise tax, which is a tax on things like tobacco and alcohol. If we didn't have this tax, the price of these things would probably be much lower, but they're bad for people, and so the government doesn't really mind making a little bit of money off of them. And then we have government regulation. So the government can regulate the use of substances that might be harmful to human health and even ban them. An example of this is the pesticide DDT, which there is no supply of DDT in the United States because the government banned it. And then we have government subsidies, which is the government giving money to businesses to encourage them to produce more of something. And so we have a lot of subsidies in agriculture, we have subsidies in the oil industry, in the renewable energy industry. One thing that the government subsidizes is corn. The government subsidizes so much corn that we invented new things to make out of it because there's so much of it around. And then we have producer expectations, which is quite similar to consumer expectations. If you think that you will make more money by producing something in a few months rather than right now, then you'll wait that extra amount of time. And then the last one is the number of producers. And this states that when a product is successful, other producers will enter the market to increase the overall supply. So with silly bands, once those took off, lots of knockoffs came about. So that's it for now. Thanks for following along, and don't forget to take the quiz at the end.